Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
This episode is supported by FX's The Shards, a seductive drama from executive producer Ryan Murphy. Set in 1980s Los Angeles, the series follows a group of glamorous, deeply entangled high school seniors drawn into a life of wealth, beauty, parties, and excess. At its center is Brett, whose reality begins to unravel when the arrival of a new student coincides with a series of mysterious murders. FX's The Shards, now streaming on Hulu.
Roger, that's a rough guess right now, over. 1-1.
Welcome to True Spies, Brief Histories. Season 2, Spy Cities. Our cities are the arena in which the great game of espionage is played, providing all manner of stage setting, from grand embassies to average-looking suburban homes. In these bonus minisodes, we'll draw on the knowledge of our True Spies experts to enhance your understanding of the secret forces that have always operated in the places we call home.
There had never been any investigation of the CIA prior to the Church Committee. There'd never been any oversight. The congressional intelligence committees that exist today did not exist then.
I'm Joe Foley, series producer for True Spies, and this is a brief history of Washington, D.C. It's the year 1814. Washington, D.C. has been the capital of a young United States for just 24 years. Like most teenagers, it's still finding its way. But now, it looks like time is running out. The British are coming. Again. Welcome to the War of 1812, the mother country's last attack on its rebellious offspring. In the corridors of the White House, a group of workers hack away at the frame of a painting. It's a portrait of George Washington, national hero, dentist's nightmare, and emblem of the democratic ideal. When the canvas is free, they stow it safely away. The workmen are acting under a woman's orders, the lady of the house no less. Her name is Dolly Madison, wife to the current president, James Madison, and right now she's getting the hell out of Dodge, with the portrait in tow. If the British want to burn her house down, and they really do, she's determined to ensure that nothing truly valuable is lost. If you're an American, you've probably heard all about Dolly's historic contribution to the field of art conservation. But this podcast is about intelligence, and she had it in spades. You see, the British assault on Washington, D.C. had been a long time coming, presaged by various diplomatic spats throughout the 1810s. And all the while, Dolly Madison had been paying attention. Decades before the idea of the First Lady as a political entity was established, Dolly hosted cross-party soirees at the White House. These events, known as squeezes due to the sheer amount of people in attendance, gave American politicos space to speak, argue, and pontificate upon the issues of the day. At a time when it wasn't unheard of for political disagreements to be settled with pistols at dawn, Dolly's get-togethers were pretty groundbreaking. Of course, they were also an opportunity for this canny political operator to gather what we might call open source intelligence on Washington's elite. Her husband, the president, certainly benefited. But Dolly's machinations weren't limited to her opulent drawing rooms. When the War of 1812 finally erupted, some sources claim that she took a more active role in the defence of the nation. Legend has it that the inimitable Mrs. Madison arranged for lookouts and messengers to act as a kind of human early warning system against the British advance on Washington. There are even reports of her taking to the White House roof wielding a spyglass. By the time the King's forces eventually descended on DC, intent on wreaking maximum havoc, Dolly knew exactly what to do. As she evacuated, she spirited presidential papers and other valuables to safety, including that famous painting. Like any good Washington insider, Dolly Madison knew the value of information. In DC, it's always been worth its weight in gold. So let's take a spin through the corridors of power, meeting the people who've used and abused this unparalleled centre of intelligence know-how. DC is a funny old place. It's not a state, and it doesn't belong to one either. It's a special district under the direct control of the federal government. With so much influence centralised in this relatively small area, around 4 times smaller than New York City, it's no surprise that spy stories are in ready supply. So let's resume our brief history with one of its most famous, or infamous, tales of intrigue. During the War of 1812, a girl was born on a plantation in Montgomery County, Maryland. Her name was Maria Rosetta O'Neill. As an adult, she'd go by Rose. Growing up, Rose was obsessed with joining DC's elegant upper crust, moving to the city as a teenager when her parents passed away. But her low birth stood in the way of her transformation into a social butterfly. That is, until she met and married Dr. Robert Greenhow, a diplomat and historian employed by the US Department of State. Soon thereafter, she was accepted by Washington's elite, receiving the nod of approval from society maven Dolly Madison herself. Dr. Greenhow met an untimely end in 1854, falling from a raised walkway in San Francisco. Nasty way to go. But the loss of her husband did little to blunt Rose's ambition. It came with a comfortable pension, after all. The widow Greenhow's drawing room was a destination for several influential figures, including President James Buchanan, who some say her influence helped to elect. At a time before any formalised notion of operational security, her charm made it easy for power players in politics and the military complex to share their secrets with her. When the Civil War between the Union and the Confederacy broke out in 1861, Rose, who always thought of herself as a Southern woman, aligned herself with the rebels. Her views, including her support for slavery, soon attracted the attention of a man called Thomas Jordan, a Confederate spy master in Washington. Jordan set Rose up as the head of a network of spies and sympathisers inside DC, and gave her a numerical cipher, which she used to encode her secret communications with the Confederate front lines. One such message was sent in the spring of 1861, when one of Rose's unsuspecting acquaintances revealed that Union forces were about to advance on the strategically important Manassas Junction in Virginia. Rose enlisted the help of a young woman called Betty Duvall, who snuck a coded warning to the Confederates, a scrap of paper wrapped in silk and concealed in her hair. The ensuing conflict is remembered as the First Battle of Bull Run, the first major land battle of the Civil War and a Confederate victory. It was their first big intelligence coup, and Rose was celebrated for it. Unfortunately for her, she was far better at gathering information than storing it. This came back to bite her when she came under scrutiny from none other than Alan Pinkerton. He was the head of the famous Pinkerton Detective Agency, and he'd been enlisted by the Union to root out espionage in their capital. Rose, whose views were no secret, was an obvious target. Some histories claim that Pinkerton rumbled Greenhow when he spotted a young man entering her home. Apparently, the great detective stood on a colleague's shoulders, peered through the window, and overheard them talking shop. Whether that's true or not, we know that Pinkerton ordered a raid on Rose's home on 16th Street, and discovered a treasure trove of evidence against her. Rose was placed under house arrest, a lenient sentence which allowed her to continue communicating with the Confederacy. Her unfortunate new position was public knowledge, so most of the actual letters she sent were ignored. Compromise doesn't really cover it. But according to some accounts, she was prone to sending coded signals to those of her network who were still active in the city from the windows of her house, using candles, handkerchiefs, or the position of her blinds. As the Pinkertons rounded up more of her co-conspirators, they threw them in there with her, earning the property a nickname, Fort Greenhow. What might surprise you is that Rose O'Neill Greenhow was eventually released without trial. Perhaps the Union didn't want to give her the opportunity to embarrass them in an open court. After a spell in actual prison, she was exiled to the Confederacy, where, the logic ran, she could do far less damage. In Richmond, Virginia, she was greeted as a heroine, the Rebel Rose. The Confederate States' first and only president, Jefferson Davis, wanted to harness that notoriety, so he sent her to Europe, where she extolled the virtues of the Southern way of life, including slavery, and wrote a lucrative memoir. But it wasn't long before she grew homesick. In 1864, she boarded a British ship bound for North Carolina, the Condor. When the Condor ran aground after attempting to evade the Union Navy, Rose decided to take matters into her own hands. She jumped into a rowboat and headed for shore. The rowboat capsized and she drowned, reportedly weighed down by $2,000 in gold, sewn into her clothes. And they say you can't take it with you. So ended the story of Washington's first celebrity spy. But she wouldn't be the last.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
This episode is supported by FX's The Shards, a seductive drama from executive producer Ryan Murphy. Set in 1980s Los Angeles, the series follows a group of glamorous, deeply entangled high school seniors drawn into a life of wealth, beauty, parties, and excess. At its center is Brett, whose reality begins to unravel when the arrival of a new student coincides with a series of mysterious murders. FX's The Shards, now streaming on Hulu.
It's the 19th of September 1940. We're in Libya, and an RAF fighter plane has just left a mighty dent in the desert. Its pilot, a young Englishman of Norwegian extraction, suffers serious injuries. He survives with a fractured skull, a smashed nose, and an incredible creative talent. His name is Roald Dahl, 24 years old, and about to embark on a thrilling new chapter.
He was so injured that his superiors decided that they had to ground him. And they tried to figure out what to do with him next. And Dahl was this incredibly handsome and tall and charming man. He was a great storyteller. And the powers that be realized that he would be perfect for intelligence.
That's the voice of Aaron Tracy, the brain behind a podcast called The Secret World of Roald Dahl. He spoke to the True Spies debrief about Dahl's exciting and occasionally X-rated foray into spycraft, much of which played out in America's capital.
So they sent him to Washington, D.C., ostensibly to work for the British Embassy. But in reality, he was working for William Stevenson's group of British spies operating in Washington and New York. And it's this really kind of incredible group of these dashing spies, all men in their early to mid-20s, and included people like Ian Fleming and David Ogilvy, who would be the inspiration for Don Draper and sort of invented modern advertising, Noel Coward, the playwright, and Roald Dahl.
Bill Stevenson, of whom you can learn more of in the True Spies episode The Importance of Being Earnest, was in charge of a group called the British Security Coordination.
He had an incredible eye for talent, choosing Dahl and Fleming and Ogilvy and Coward, just these brilliant people who would turn out to be extraordinary writers and fabulous of all kind. He was handsome and dashing and always incredibly well-dressed, very secretive, very charming, and Dahl worked directly for him. Their offices in D.C. were at the British Embassy.
Established in June 1940, the BSC's mission was to sway America's political elite towards joining the war in Europe. Dahl, for his part, took a rather hands-on approach.
Was to seduce the wives of powerful Americans who were not yet on the Allied side. So Dahl was rumored to have had affairs with incredibly powerful women. Standard Oil heiress Millicent Rogers, cosmetics mogul Elizabeth Arden, gold mine heiress Evelyn Wash McLean, the editor of the Ladies' Home Journal, an Oscar-nominated actress, and then the most sort of long-term affair, the most consequential affair for Dahl was with a woman named Claire Booth Luce.
Today, not many people know the name Claire Booth Luce, but in the 40s, she was a serious player.
Her husband was Henry Luce, who was the publisher of Time magazine and Life magazine and a bunch of other really important magazines at the time. He was sort of the most important media man in the country. And his magazines were often publishing anti-British pieces. And this was something that Stevenson and Churchill couldn't have. And so they wanted to find a way to influence Henry Luce.
Powerful husband aside, Claire had her own platform, one which Dahl was able to influence.
She was a reporter for major magazines. She was a war correspondent. She was a Broadway playwright. And she was also a congresswoman. So, Dahl kind of struck gold. She was 13 years older than him, but she fell for him hard. And they dated for a long time while she was married to Henry. And Dahl's goal was to both try to sort of get Henry's magazines to publish more pro-British pieces, and also to get Clare to take down the temperature against America's intervention in the war in Congress.
Not that it was all easy going for the Playboy spy. In one memorable report to his handlers, Dahl begged to be reassigned. I won't repeat his exact phrasing. Suffice it to say that, in the boudoir, Dahl had met his match, and then some. Luckily, his other talents compensated for this lack of stamina.
Dahl sort of had a giant coup that came from what would later make him so famous, which was his writing. Dahl wrote a propaganda short story called The Gremlins, which was very much about British-American cooperation. And it was this really sort of fanciful tale that involved these little green creatures that would get onto the backs of RAF planes. And the story got published, and it got passed around Washington, and it got into the hands of Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor loved the story so much, she began reading it to her grandkids, and she wanted to meet the author. So she invited 26-year-old Roald Dahl over to the White House.
Unsurprisingly, Dahl charmed the First Lady, so much so that she invited him to spend time at the president's Hyde Park estate in New York for the 4th of July weekend.
To hang out with her and Franklin, which, when you think about it, I mean, it's just so crazy. Like, for a 26-year-old spy to just befriend a lowly White House intern would be amazing. Dahl, because this is kind of the way his life went, was making friends with the First Family. He was mixing martinis for FDR, and he wrote up long reports about what he believed was in FDR's mind, and would send them back to London for Churchill. Basically give Churchill any indication that he could that FDR was thinking about, bringing America into the war or hesitating. It was a big part of Dahl's job to kind of figure that out.
The threat of espionage against the United States is ever present in D.C., but in this spy city, the homegrown intelligence community hasn't always been above reproach itself.
Before the Church Committee, the CIA thought pretty much we can get away with almost anything. After the Church Committee, there were rules limiting their power in a way that had never been done before. And so it really changed the nature of the national security state.
That's James Risen, who spoke to True Spies in 2024. He's a Pulitzer-winning journalist and the author of The Last Honest Man, a book about Senator Frank Church. When Church entered the Senate in 1956 at just 32 years old, James says he did so with a fairly standard set of Democratic stances, liberal but hawkish on the Cold War. But in the 1960s, he began to speak out against the war in Vietnam.
The Vietnam War turned him and changed him fundamentally from being a conventional Democrat into a really radical liberal politician.
In 1972, President Richard Nixon would inadvertently give Church the opportunity to hold America's Cold Warriors to account. Operatives attached to Nixon's re-election campaign were caught red-handed at the Washington headquarters of the Democratic National Committee, the Watergate complex. They'd been attempting to plant listening devices and photograph important documents. Tricky dicky indeed.
And that led to the Watergate scandal. And in 1973, it led to hearings in Congress, mostly in the Senate, by the Senate Watergate Committee. And the role of the CIA in Watergate became a major issue for a while when it turned out that Richard Nixon had tried to use the CIA to quash the FBI's investigation of Watergate and of the Watergate cover-up.
Bad times for the agency, but they could always get worse. In 1974, a journalist called Seymour Hersh began reporting on the CIA's illegal surveillance of American citizens. After that, the Senate approved an unprecedented investigation.
And so in January 1975, the Church Committee was created. Frank Church was named to be chairman. And you got to remember, there had never been any investigation of the CIA prior to the Church Committee. There'd never been any oversight. The congressional intelligence committees that exist today did not exist then.
The Church Committee's first major investigation would focus on the agency's attempts to assassinate foreign leaders.
What they found was a CIA alliance with the mafia that had started in 1960, first under the Eisenhower administration and then early in the Kennedy administration, to use the mafia to try to kill Fidel Castro.
As we know, that didn't pan out. In fact, the operation was incredibly sloppy. So sloppy, in fact, that eventually the FBI caught wind of it. Director J. Edgar Hoover sniffed out that one of the mobsters involved had a mistress, whose affections he happened to share with President John F. Kennedy.
And so Hoover took it to the White House and confronted Kennedy in 1962 over this squalid series of facts. And shortly thereafter, Kennedy approved Hoover's request to wiretap Martin Luther King. And I believe that's not a coincidence.
Which brings us on to another discovery by the Church Committee.
There was a guy on the Church Committee staff named Mike Epstein who had, when he joined the Church Committee staff in early 1975, he remembered while he was at the Justice Department in the Kennedy administration, he remembered hearing rumors at the time about how the FBI was going after Martin Luther King. And he had always wanted to go back and investigate that. And J. Edgar Hoover in particular had become obsessed with the rise of Martin Luther King, the rise of the Civil Rights Movement, and how Hoover personally, who was deeply racist, had come to believe that Martin Luther King was a communist puppet, that he was being controlled by Moscow, and that the entire civil rights movement was basically a communist front.
Hoover, the evidence suggested, had been wrong, but that hadn't stopped him leveraging the full force of the Bureau against Dr. King when wiretaps on the civil rights leader had revealed a series of extramarital affairs.
And so as soon as they found that out, they shifted their focus from looking for communist influence to just trying to smear him by going after his personal life. And in one of the most famous incidents uncovered by the Church Committee was they found that FBI had anonymously sent wiretap recordings to King with an anonymous note saying, "You have 34 days, you know what to do." And the 34 days really was reference to the fact that he was going to be receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. The message clearly meant, we want you to kill yourself before you get the Nobel Peace Prize because we will release all this damaging information about you.
Before he was killed in 1968, there were various other attempts to discredit Dr. King.
And so it was a concerted effort by the FBI for years to try to destroy the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King. And it had never really come out prior to the Church Committee.
The committee also took on Washington's most secretive intelligence agency, the NSA.
But Church pushed for not only public hearings, but also a public report that named the telecommunications companies that had cooperated secretly for years to turn over American communications data to the NSA without any legal authority. So it was the Church Committee's investigation which led to Congress passing the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, which is still in place today. It's the law that first restricted the power of the NSA's ability to spy on Americans.
For more detail on the groundbreaking work of Frank Church and his committee, listen to James Risen's full True Spies episode, The Last Honest Man, or buy the book of the same name.
When it's time to scale your business, it's time for Shopify. Get everything you need to grow the way you want. Like, all the way. Stack more sales with the best converting checkout on the planet. Track your cha-chings from every channel, right in one spot. And turn real-time reporting into big-time opportunities. Take your business to a whole new level. Switch to Shopify. Start your free trial today.
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Bring a date, your squad, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
The Church Committee benefited from a leakier era in American intelligence. With modern operational security in place, it's difficult to imagine a project of equivalent scale getting off the ground today. That said, there's no such thing as a watertight organisation, and the government in Washington is no exception to the rule.
Well, it's a lot better than it used to be. The government was known for very significant breaches. Now, the government still does get breached. The information gets stolen. Not too many years ago, the CIA had their vault of cyber attacks stolen, the NSA as well.
Eric O'Neill knows what he's talking about. He's the legendary FBI agent who caught Robert Hanssen, perhaps the most notorious Russian mole in the Bureau's history. Eric joined us on the True Spies debrief to discuss a more recent threat to Washington's security, one that deals in data, not dead drops.
So cyber attackers do continue to attack the government, but it's a lot easier to attack the companies that are either downstream or are providing services to the government. So to attack government agencies, if you're a spy, if you are an intelligence service for one of the countries who wants to, for example, do harm to the US or the UK, or any countries in the West, it's a little easier to attack, say, a large company that provides a networking tool to the major government agencies.
That's called a supply chain attack.
You attack a vendor to get to your real target, then to attack that government agency.
In 2020, the Washington Post revealed that several government departments had been penetrated by one such attack.
SolarWinds, which is a cybersecurity company and a networking company that provides a networking tool, a connection tool to many government agencies and most of the Fortune 500 businesses, was attacked with what's called a Trojan. Remember the Trojan horse? You know, they wheeled it through the gates. Well, the Russian attackers were able to get in and load malicious code into one of their updates. And when they sent the update out to all their customers, they were infected, including most of the big government agencies.
Through SolarWinds, Russian spies were able to gain privileged access to the inner workings of the American government. The Treasury, the Department of Commerce, and the Department of Homeland Security were all breached.
And that allowed for months Russian spies to sift through data in these government agencies and other companies and search for secrets to steal. So that's one of the most critical attacks that a lot of people don't know about that happened just a few years ago, and will have large downstream consequences as Russian spy masters use that data to help them and hurt us. And there's many others. So it's a little easier to attack other companies than to attack the government directly because they tend to be a little more closed off, not as internet enabled, and a little bit more difficult for spies to penetrate and infiltrate.
Throughout its history, Washington has been embroiled in one sort of turmoil or another. Unpopular wars, internal power struggles, even the occasional impeachment. But unusually for this series, I'd like to finish on an optimistic note. DC's far from perfect, but if the stories we've heard today tell us anything, it's that this spy city is a survivor. Governments come and go, bringing various boons and curses to the population they represent. Even so, the democratic ideals it was built on, however flawed in their execution, are still breathing. I hope you've enjoyed this brief history of Washington D.C. If you feel like sticking around, it pops up pretty regularly in the True Spies back catalogue. For a start, you could check out Eric O'Neill's legendary investigation into Robert Hanssen in Grey Suit and the Ghost. Or there's the tale of DIA double agent Ana Montes, also known as the Queen of Cuba. For more commentary on how Washington is moving with the times, listen to Dr. Amy Ziegert's debrief on the nexus between Silicon Valley and American policy. I'm Joe Foley. As always, if you want more episodes of True Spies, early and ad-free, be sure to subscribe to SPYSCAPE Plus at plus.spyscape.com. You'll also get access to exclusive bonus content, like the Razumov Files, a modern retelling of Joseph Conrad's Under Western Eyes, and true crime caper, The Great James Bond Car Robbery.
see you.
Avatar: Fire and Ash is now streaming on Disney+. It's the film critics are calling the best Avatar yet.
Go, 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 go!
A true epic and completely jaw-dropping.
This is the only pure thing in this world.
Return to Pandora on Disney+.
It will be an adventure for the whole family.
And watch the Oscar-winning phenomenon at home.
This is sick!
Avatar: Fire and Ash, now streaming on Disney+. Rated PG-13.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.